Kato moved silently through the shadowed corridors of the royal palace, his black uniform blending perfectly with the dark corners and polished marble. Every step was calculated, each movement precise, a testament to years of rigorous training. The palace had always seemed impenetrable to outsiders, but tonight, he wasn't just any intruder. He was the Black Belt Phantom, a name whispered in underground circles with both fear and admiration. His target was simple, at least in his mind, a single guard who had humiliated his master years ago. The thought of revenge had consumed him for years, and now, finally, the opportunity had presented itself. The hall he entered glittered with chandeliers that hung like frozen stars, reflecting on the polished floors and casting intricate patterns of light across the walls. Servants moved quietly in the distance, their presence unnoticed by Kato, whose focus was entirely on the imposing figure of the guard stationed near the ceremonial doors. The guard stood like a statue, tall and muscular, his polished uniform reflecting the golden light. His posture was rigid, confidence radiating from every line of his body. Kato could see why he had become a symbol of authority in the palace, but he also saw a flaw, a hint of arrogance in the way the guard held himself, a weakness Kato could exploit. In a flash, Kato closed the distance. His movement was a blur, too fast for the human eye to follow, and with a precise strike, his hand connected with the guard's cheek. The impact was sharp and resounding, echoing through the marble hall. The guard staggered, eyes wide in disbelief, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. Gasps echoed from the servants nearby, but Kato didn't pause to acknowledge them. His eyes were fixed on the guard, who now looked both shocked and enraged. The young master of vengeance felt a rush of adrenaline, a surge of satisfaction, knowing he had landed the first strike without warning. But the palace was not an ordinary battlefield. The distant sound of alarms began to wail, the echo bouncing off the high ceilings. Kato's heart skipped a beat, a sudden awareness dawning upon him that this mission would not be as simple as he had imagined. He had underestimated the palace's security, the speed with which reinforcements would arrive. Yet, even as the tension rose, he remained composed, his mind calculating, his body ready to react. He took a step back, his stance defensive, prepared for whatever came next. He knew the next moments would test every ounce of skill he had ever learned, and he braced himself for the inevitable confrontation that was about to engulf him in the heart of the royal palace. The echo of armored footsteps grew louder as more guards poured into the grand hall, filling every corridor with the metallic clatter of swords and the heavy weight of disciplined training. Kato's initial rush of confidence began to waver. He had faced skilled opponents in dimly lit streets, in underground arenas, but never had he been confronted by such a disciplined and coordinated force within the vast, echoing halls of a royal palace. Each guard moved with synchronized precision, their formation designed to cut off any escape, and for the first time, Kato felt the pressure of being truly outnumbered. The guard he had struck earlier stumbled to his feet, his rage transforming his expression into something primal. "You dare strike a royal guard?" he bellowed, his voice carrying the authority of the palace itself. Kato froze momentarily, realizing the magnitude of what he had done. This was no mere street fight. He had challenged the law of the land, and the palace's defenders were about to remind him of their unyielding discipline. He shifted his weight, preparing to defend himself, but the marble floors were slippery, amplifying every misstep. Kato's black belt, once a symbol of dominance, now felt like a heavy reminder of the arrogance that had led him here. He moved with blinding speed, weaving between attacks, striking with precision, but every guard that fell seemed to be replaced by another equally skilled and determined. The adrenaline that had fueled his confidence began to mix with a creeping sense of panic. The walls of the hall seemed to close in on him, the chandeliers above swaying slightly as if the palace itself were watching his every move. Sweat streamed down Kato's face as he darted to the side, narrowly avoiding a sweeping strike from a long sword. Each clash sent vibrations through his arms and legs, his muscles burning with exertion. He realized that even though he had trained for years, this environment, the confined space, the polished floors, the sheer number of opponents, was completely different from any dojo or alleyway. Each breath came faster, each movement more desperate. The guard he had slapped approached again, fury blazing in his eyes. Kato could see the resolve in the man's movements, the certainty that he would not allow this affront to go unanswered. Trapped between the walls and a growing number of reinforcements, Kato began to understand the reality. His plan had been impulsive, born of vengeance and overconfidence. Now, with every attack he blocked, every strike he dodged, the realization sank in that survival was becoming as important as revenge. The adrenaline that had once driven him was now a double-edged sword, fueling his fight but sharpening the awareness of how truly vulnerable he had become in the heart of the royal palace. Cato's breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as he found himself pressed against the marble staircase, the polished floors glinting beneath the gold glow of the chandeliers. The guards surrounded him, forming a tightening circle, their swords and batons pointed directly at his chest. The same adrenaline that had fueled his initial assault was now replaced with exhaustion and a creeping fear he had never felt before. He had entered the palace as a fearless fighter, a master of his craft, but now the reality of his vulnerability pressed on him like a heavy weight. His eyes flicked from one guard to another, searching for an opening, a sliver of hope to escape. There was none. Each man was trained to anticipate movement, to counter with brutal precision. Cato realized that his skills, honed in countless battles on the streets and in dojos, were nearly useless in a situation designed to overwhelm him. The hall that had once seemed like the perfect arena for his vengeance had become a trap, echoing every sound he made, amplifying his isolation. The hulking guard he had slapped stood a step closer, his eyes cold, unyielding. Cato lowered his stance slowly, the pride that had defined him for so long now giving way to the undeniable truth: he could not win this fight. I surrender, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant alarm and the soft clinking of armor. His black belt, once a symbol of invincibility, now seemed almost ironic, a reminder that even the strongest fighter could falter when arrogance clouded judgment. The guards hesitated for a brief moment, unsure how to respond to this sudden shift from aggression to submission. The hulking guard, the one Cato had challenged, took a slow step forward, his massive frame casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the staircase. "You're lucky you didn't die tonight," the guard said, his voice calm but laden with authority. "Next time, think before you strike." There was no malice in his tone, only a cold reminder of the consequences of underestimating one's opponents. Cato nodded, feeling a wave of humiliation wash over him. His muscles were trembling, exhaustion overtaking the surge of adrenaline that had carried him this far. He allowed himself to be guided by the guards, his hands raised slightly in submission. Each step down the staircase was a reminder of how fragile pride could be, and how quickly a confident fighter could become a humbled man. As he exited the grand hall, the echoes of the palace faded behind him, replaced by the quiet night outside. Cato's mind raced with reflection and regret. He had entered seeking revenge, seeking to prove his skill, but he left with a deeper understanding: strength alone was not enough. Discipline, humility, and respect for one's limits were what truly defined mastery. And in that realization, Cato understood that some battles were not won by force, but by knowing when to survive and learn.